Good evening. Welcome to the Berry Center and tonight's Josephine Ardery Foundation Distinguished Lecture Series. I'm Michelle Guthrie, Director of the Archives and Library at the Berry Center in Newcastle, Kentucky. In recent presentations, we've shown a spotlight on Mary Berry and What a Good Farm Can Teach, the Honorable Judge John Logan Brent, Henry County Judge Executive, a county judge who understands and honors agrarian values, in a conversation about sustainable economic growth in rural areas. Virginia Berry Aguilar's lecture about cultural programming that can help restore a sense of community in a small rural place. Dr. Leah Bayens, Sterling College Dean of the Wendell Berry Farming Program, and the connection between the liberal arts and an undergraduate degree in sustainable farming. The Reverend John Inscore Essick, co-pastor at Port Royal Baptist Church, and the Reverend Laura Levins and their research on Henry County's historic African American churches and religious life, and in honor of the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the Kentucky Humanities Council, a lecture by Bill Goodman, Executive Director of Kentucky Humanities. All of these presentations have been designed to provide students and citizens an inventory of the cultural richness that is in our home place, in the hopes that they will be inspired to protect it and preserve it. And in the instance that you're joining our audience from another area or even state, I hope you'll be inspired to replicate this work in your own home place. With this in mind, we have come to a time here and in many other rural places that industrial interests, distilling, logging, mining, energy, and industrial agriculture have descended on rural areas to colonize resources. At a recent public hearing, the question was asked, what is your plan for growing agriculture in Henry County? How many do you expect to employ? How long will it take? We, among others, have taken it upon ourselves to answer these questions through our work to become a culture of good land use, a culture of good farming by people who have the ability to farm well. We want to help increase the numbers of people who can afford to farm well. And we consider what we need to do now to guarantee the careful consideration of what could be here, careful consideration and understanding of what precious things might be lost forever for perhaps little gain without the necessary prudent planning for reasonable growth and change. To discuss these issues and answer these questions and others, tonight's distinguished lecturers are Beth Douglas, the director of the Berry Center's Our Home Place Meet, and Mary Berry, the executive director of the Berry Center. Beth works directly with our member farmers in a program to produce a superior product, beef raised humanely and processed locally, which can provide a sustainable living to our farmers. She'll be in conversation with Mary Berry, who for 11 years now has continued her family's advocacy and led all of our programs here at the Berry Center in working for the good of farmers and our rural areas. Welcome, Beth and Mary.
Thank you, Michelle, and I'd like to add our thanks to the Josephine Ardery Foundation for making this lecture series possible. It pleases me so much to think of our friends here and there listening to us talk about our work at the Berry Center, especially in this time when we haven't been able to visit as readily as we once could, but maybe can again now. Today's talk or conversation is with Beth Douglas, who Michelle has introduced, about our program at the Berry Center called Our Home Place Meet. But I think the subtitle for this could be What We Need Is Here. Years ago, probably around 2009, I went to speak to my father about my worries about the agriculture in Henry County, the state of the farms, the state of the farmers, the economic disease that we were suffering from. And one of the things I said to him was that after something like 40 years of a local food movement, we still, or not still, we were continuing to lose farmers and farmland more and more quickly. I also talked to him about our need to educate young farmers, that we desperately needed to keep the farmers that we've got and grow a new population of farmers, and that we needed to become a culture and an economy that would support good farming. The result of that conversation is the Berry Center. The specific result of that conversation about economics is our home place meat. It seems to me that what's been left out of the conversation about local food is the land itself, the people who do the work. So, working landscapes, working people. My father advised me to use an inventory to start the good work here. And that inventory included a well-watered landscape, plenty of good land left, land that will grow good grass, good forage crops. What was left of a pretty good farm culture. And the memory of a co-op that had worked for our land and our people for decades. And that program was the Burley Tobacco Program. Its principal author was my grandfather, John Berry Sr. I remember saying to my father that the ideas that started the program of supply management in order to maintain a parity price had been quickly forgotten and did not exist in the conversations that I was taking place in across the country and in my home state. So I said the Burley Tobacco Co-op needs to be remembered, not forgotten, needs to be studied. And so we have my grandfather's papers here, and we have indeed studied them. And the result of our thinking of the plight of farmers and why the local food movement had not taken hold enough to change the culture of farming, and why our beloved county of Henry and our beloved Commonwealth of Kentucky was continuing to suffer, was because we had not put infrastructure in, to put something between the farmers and the marketplace, something to maintain a fair price, something to control supply. The overproduction is the singular cruelty of industrial agriculture. I have been guided by my family, so I'm so lucky to have been so well guided by my family. Nothing that the Berry Center is doing has come out of new thinking. It's come out of old thinking. And some places we've seen that the old thinking needs to be improved. And so we're trying to do that. But several things that we think to be true here. One is that to mitigate the problems of climate change, we cannot ignore working landscapes. We cannot continue to think that we can preserve and put aside some places, and those places indeed should be put aside, but put aside some places and ignore the rest, and in fact destroy the rest. We have a population of people who must live from the land, whether we know it or whether we don't. So our work is about climate change. Our work is about justice. Our work is about all kinds of aspirational things. But the guidance of my uncle, John, lives in this statement that he made to a group of people many, many years ago. And I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but I can tell you that what he said is, our rural places have not been destroyed because of unbridled capitalism, because of technological improvements, and so on and so on. They've been destroyed by design. Now this was a very encouraging quotation to me, because if design has destroyed our rural culture, our agrarian culture, then a different design can bring it back or improve it. Well, we'll be improving it for a long time. So a different design then is called for. We've got an education program that's teaching young people a different design other than industrial agriculture. We've got the culture center and bookstore that's upholding the stories and the traditions of agrarian places. We've got the archive that's saving that information from the past, really to help us judge the history of agriculture, but also to teach us something about how we might go forward. Our Home Place Meat is working with farmers to change the destructive design of our economy, our industrial economy. With me today is Beth Douglas, who is, as I said earlier, heading up Our Home Place Meat. And she joins me today to talk about how that program's working, its challenges, but also the great hope that many of us are taking from what we're seeing happening in that program. I heard my father say recently that he feels that he was talking about something he had written. I'm going to say the same thing about the work we're doing here. The work at the Berry Center is helping me to feel that we're digging ourselves out of the grave we've dug ourselves. And Beth is such a big part of that work and is doing such a good job working with our farmers. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
And let's start with a little sketching out. Let's talk about, first of all, our first product that we launched with Our Home Place Meat, and that is rose veal. And tell us how that works, and we'll see how it goes.
So we started out with 9 farmers in our rose veal program. Rose veal is a young grass-fed beef, and it's perfect for Henry County's cow-calf landscape. It's a weaned animal, so basically the animals are weaned from their mothers and taken to trackside to be harvested and sold. And it works because normally that's when a farmer would take their animals to the stockyards and sell them and gamble on that market. Mm-hmm. The animals are harvested between 575 and 710 pounds, and they are animals that are not a byproduct of the dairy industry. They are raised for their meat, and because of their movement around pastures, they have the rosy color to the meat, mm-hmm. and that's where they get their names. They're harvested right before their first birthday, usually around 11 months. So they're not babies that are kept in cages. They are animals that are supposed to be harvested for us to eat.
Well, let's hit a little harder on this issue of veal. As you said, this is rose veal. It is not the white veal that people are accustomed to. That is a completely different product than what we're processing.
That's a byproduct of the dairy industry. Mm-hmm. Those are animals that are put in calf hutches and fed formula, and their movement is confined, and they just want to fatten up an animal as quickly as possible, and then they're harvested very, very young. These animals are with their mothers on pastures, and they are living their best lives.
They're living as they should live.
They live as they should.
As the animals that they are.
And
you said some things in that answer, in that explanation, that I think we could talk a little more about. I spoke of the inventory that we needed to start the work at the Berry Center. The inventory that led me to subtitle this "What We Need Is Here," the farmers, the land, the local knowledge, etc. But there were some things we didn't have. that the inventory, I think we knew we didn't have them, but the inventory helped us see how clearly we needed them. One is Trackside Butcher Shop, which you mentioned, and the other is What Chefs Want, our distributor. So let's talk a little bit about Trackside and what it's meant to our program.
Trackside started the year before our home place meet. So they started in 2016. We started in 2017. And this program absolutely would not be possible without them. They make sure that we can schedule our animals and that we get a quality product back that is ready to go to the distributor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they do fit my subtitle here because there were two young men from an adjoining county of Henry County. They were here. They wanted to do this work. The community came together to support their efforts to start Trackside, and it has been just a godsend to our community and certainly to our home place meet. What do you think is the difference between what we're doing with our farmers and Roseville, and we'll get to another product in a minute, and first of all, why does Roseville suit us so well? And what is the difference between what we're doing with our farmers and, say, direct marketing, which would mean these farmers are probably going to farmers markets, maybe running a CSA, but there are fewer of those. What do you think we're offering the farmers of value, and what are the farmers themselves saying about that?
So every year we give our farmers a contract, and we tell them how many animals we'll purchase and what price. Mm-hmm. So they know the weight range that we'll accept, so they can figure out how much money they're going to make off of their animals. And they're not gambling with the market. They know what they're going to get. Mm-hmm. And they know that we're building this program so that they can get more each year, but knowing what you have and what you can get for it is very valuable.
It means you can plan your year.
That means you can plan your year.
That's right.
For our farmers, they appreciate that from the program. Instead of having to drive an hour to the stockyards, they know that they're going to just drive at most 20 minutes up the road, and they're not going to pay all of the commissions and fees. They know that they're going to get more of their money. They are going to keep more of their money.
And they know they're working with a program that's putting them first and good farming first.
They get the first bite of every dollar.
What do you think? I think it might be helpful to talk a little about the commodity agriculture that our farmers, most of our farmers, are at least partly in, and many of them all in. I say, and I've said probably 1 million times now, that we have only two choices in agriculture. You can be large and industrial, or you can be small and entrepreneurial. There's almost nothing in the middle. So what we're trying to do is put something in the middle. But this is the place that I think it would be good to talk a little more about parity and what that means to farmers. The very simplest definition I can come up with is that a farmer gets back cost of production and keeps a profit, some profit, a fair profit. They're not getting rich on this, and that's not the intention, but it's a fair profit. In commodity agriculture, parity has been achieved maybe once, and maybe it was 100 years ago. I don't think people understand that. Do you? Do you think people understand that their corn and soybeans, that the corn and soybeans or the beef cattle or most of anything else is largely sold under parity or cost of production?
Most farmers are price takers. So they take it to the market and they get what they get. And that's a part of get big or get out. You have to keep getting bigger so that you can make more money. And it's just this constant cycle of get big, get bigger, make more money. But at the end of the day, they're not really making more money because the cost of production keeps going up. And at least it seems like the value of the product or what you take home it covers your expenses, and you're just in a constant cycle of turning over money.
Well, turning it, the industrial agriculture model is funneling money. It's very quickly moving money into the in industrial agriculture corporations.
Right.
So, so we're trying to check that.
Well, instead of the farmer making the money they need, because, you know, we all like to eat and the farmers are there to help us eat. Instead of the farmers making the money, it's the corporations making the money.
At the expense, it's turned farming into mining. So we're destroying the land and we're destroying the people. We might say, before we move on, a little about what Rose Veal does for the farmers, all of the things we've said, but it also removes them a little bit more out of the money economy. So Kentucky grows grass really well. And there's this miraculous thing that happens in beef cattle. Grass makes milk. Calves thrive on milk and grass. And then when harvested smaller, you have this delectable product.
It is.
Yes, it's delicious. This is the way all the farmers that I knew when I was growing up harvest their cattle, as you well know and hear nearly every day. Let's talk about then the second program that we added, or the second product that we added, berry beef. Let me say it was a meeting about berry beef that led my father to say, you're allowing people to eat with a clean conscience, or a clear conscience.
Clear conscience.
Clear conscience, one or the other, both. Tell us a little bit about berry beef. What is the difference? What's going on with it? And why is What Chefs Want such an important part?
So just to back up a little bit, we started selling Rose Veal through What Chefs Want.
Oh yes, you did.
January 2020, and that was right before COVID hit and all of the restaurants shut down, and a lot of things changed in that time. We had a very generous donor who allowed us to feed people through the Lee Initiative, who was feeding people. She donated the money to the Lee Initiative to buy Rose Veal for their meals. And so that's how we adapted to COVID. But some producers dropped out of the distribution network during that time. And so What Chefs Want approached us in the fall of 2020 and asked us to think about whether we would be open to a finished cattle program. That means that it would be something that graded at least choice. And so that took a lot of thought on our part, because it is very different than the Rose Veal program. We're asking our farmers to hold on to these animals a little bit longer, and we've allowed them to make plans with Rose Veal, and we're asking them to change things. So we wanted to do what was best for our farmers, but there was enough interest amongst them and opportunity for growth that we decided to move forward with it. So berry beef was born, and it is a finished grain on grass product. The animals are born here in Henry County. They're finished here in Henry County. They're harvested in Henry County.
And they're outside on grass all the time.
They are out on pastures, and they either come to the barn to feed, for their feed, or, we have creep feeders out in the pastures, and they can eat on the grass as much as they want. They can eat
And
their feed.
the alternative in commodity agriculture to get a calf to this weight is the awful feedlot system,
Right.
which is
not going
really
to give you a
an
healthy
abomination.
Yeah, it's not going to give you a healthy animal. The animals are confined, and they want to put on the weight as quickly as possible. And while we would love for our farmers to move the animals as quickly as possible, we are reducing their costs by allowing them to eat the grass and still gain weight. And
still receive a parity price that they can count on.
That they can, yeah. So we want the animals to be healthy. We want the farmers to come out financially healthy. And normally these animals are harvested around 12 to 1,300 pounds. But the difference with this program is that we're building this relationship with What Chefs Want. They buy the animals directly from us, and then they market them to restaurants and to markets in Louisville.
When What Chefs Want came to the Berry Center to visit with us, to hear a business talking to a potential vendor, which we are to What Chefs Want, to talk about planning 15 years out is, in my experience, well, I have no experience like that. That is unheard of. So What Chefs Want, a Louisville-based company, is a place that really is taking seriously a commitment to farming and to farmers. I'm still amazed that it happened.
Well, and we weren't the first people they approached. They had some current vendors that...
What?
They had some current vendors that they were already working with them. But the hopes for this program are so huge that they wanted somebody that was invested in a local program and had the capacity to grow.
That's
and
right.
the fact that we work with now 11 farmers and are hoping to add more next year, we have that capacity and that love and respect for local.
Well, I think that, I know you and I talk a lot about what developing all this has been. It's been a proper challenge. It's been extremely interesting and extremely hopeful. What we've seen, I think, in the way our farmers have stepped up and become, when we started, a group of pretty silent people waiting to hear. The first meeting we had of our home place meat, people were very quiet. Farm families were there and quiet. That's changed over time. Tell me something about that.
So at one of the first field days, we're all kind of looking around at each other, and some of us know each other, some of us don't. And it's like, okay, what is this? The program is such a great opportunity that you're looking around like, what's the catch? But as time has gone by, what we found is a group of people that are willing to work together to make this work, because it is a great program and there is no catch. We're not trying to fool anyone. What we're trying to do is make a difference.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be a catch. There's such great hope that we'll restore some health, economic health, health of the land, health of the people, health of the small communities around here that have not recovered from the end of the tobacco culture, which we have talked about a lot in many places. So,
but they were just not used to being in a room and being asked their opinions. So the fact that we came to them and said, okay, how is this working for you? Mm-hmm. How does this affect you? What changes can we make to make this better? And so now we're getting to the point where they're like, okay, these people respect my opinion and they care about what I think. And so starting with that has led them to work with each other. They all have each other's phone numbers, and if somebody is creep feeding their animals and somebody is bucket feeding their animals, they can talk to each other and say, well, what kind of feed are you using? How is this affecting you? How can I make my operation better? Yeah. So it's not just prompted by us asking questions. They're asking each other questions and going back to that community support. Mm-hmm. And
these are passionate farmers in passionate conversation with each other about farming.
Yep.
There's nothing better as far as I'm concerned. If people have read my father's fiction, they'll see in that fiction some of what I remember of the farm communities around here, people working together, talking together, sharing each other's fates, happy times, hard times, and so on. And that's some of what we've lost around here. And I feel very grateful to you and very grateful to the farmers themselves and for the trackside, What Chefs Want, all of what's come together to begin to restore again a community.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing.
We are not in competition with each other. We are all working together
for exactly
one
right.
end goal.
That's exactly right. One thing maybe that we haven't touched on is that we are working to become a co-op. This is our goal. When our home place meat can stand alone, we hope that it can stand alone. We don't know exactly how that looks yet, but we do think that it's very important that the co-op has had time. It's been supported by philanthropic help to the Berry Center to keep this program going, to give us the opportunity, along with the farmers, to learn, to make mistakes and recover from them, to learn what works and what doesn't. And we're on that path. I think that's really important.
We needed time to learn our lessons and make sure that we're making the right decisions.
Mm-hmm. And all signs tell us that we're working in the right direction.
Yes.
So that's a lot to look forward to. Well, Beth, we've talked about roast veal, we've talked about berry beef. I think you maybe ought to touch on the standards that we ask our farmers to abide by, and what our role in the maturing of these calves is.
So for roast veal, we have a weight range, 575 to 710 pounds. Mm-hmm. We want them preferably right off the cow, not weaned, but
weaning weight.
Weaning weight.
Mm-hmm. And under a year old.
The roast veal needs to be under a year old. We do have our farmers sign affidavits on that, including their birth month, so that we know legally this is veal. They are not fed grain. They're just raised on the perennial pastures, and they do not get antibiotics, steroids, or hormones. They are all considered ash-free. Mm-hmm. For the berry beef, they are finished Angus cattle.
Why Angus?
Because of the way the meat marbles. That's just what the markets want, and so that's the best way to make sure that the chefs get what they want.
Well, that's all very important, and I want to editorialize a little about that. It's also one of the values we went into this program with, which is working with what farmers were already doing, not asking our farmers to take a big financial hit trying to invest in what we needed, different cattle, different ways of raising cattle and so on. So the market wants black cattle.
Yeah.
The market wants Angus, at least partly Angus. So if something happened, if something happened to the Berry Center, we just imploded one day, our farmers would not be hurt.
Right.
Because they could still sell the cattle they have at the best price possible. It would be not as good as what we're offering, but it would still be a good price. So it's been important to me that we not put our farmers at risk. We ask for standards, we insist on them, we have rules, but we also aren't asking them to risk their farms.
Right.
Yeah.
So as a part of the commitment to this program, What Chefs Want has actually hired someone to help us to watch the cattle grow and to visit our farms and help us know when our animals are going to grade choice for the Berry Beef program. And he has been an absolute delight to work with, but he has so much knowledge.
We've all learned from Tom.
Yes, but you know, when you know that your distributor is going to buy all of your cattle that grades choice, you want all of the cattle to grade choice. So to have someone who can look at a live animal and say, that one's ready, it saves us from harvesting an animal and figuring out that we need to find another market for it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that is another sign of the commitment that What Chefs Want has shown to our farmers and to their work with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. You also see the cattle some, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the farmers have needed to agree that somebody from the Berry Center is going to see the cattle along the way.
So
they're tagged for our program.
They are tagged for our program, but we also do farm visits to make sure that we do have healthy landscapes and healthy animals and that the program thrives.
So when Daddy says that we're allowing people to eat with a clear conscience, this is an utterly transparent local food system.
It is.
It is. I've been thinking a lot for a while about shorter supply chains, shortening supply lines. You touched on our ability to get meat to places that have needed meat in the last 4 years. West Louisville, we're getting ready to do something in eastern Kentucky after the devastating floods there. We've taken meat to western Kentucky after the devastating tornadoes there. But in particular, I'd like to talk a little about our donation, supported by philanthropy, to West Louisville when the supply chain shut down and there were people left in need. And people who were working to feed those people were looking for protein. And we were the place that they could find a significant amount of good, delicious, high quality food to move into the place and places that needed it. I wrote a letter at that point to the mayor of Louisville and said, all our conversations all these years are about this. If we could reestablish an urban-rural connection so that Louisville becomes less and less dependent on 1,000-mile supply chains and is more and more dependent on the landscape that surrounds it, Louisville is better off. The landscape around Louisville is better off. It's just better. But we've got to do this every day. We've got to think about this every day, because if we don't, then when we need the food, it isn't there.
And
So this is one thing that our home place meat has done. It has aggregated enough meat to satisfy the needs of chefs, to satisfy the needs of local eaters, but also to satisfy the needs of people hurt by catastrophic events. I think that this is really important to think about, and important to think about the program itself as replicable. It could be, couldn't it?
It could be in anything. It is. So we have a lot of documentation that we just kind of hang on to. And we've been contacted by people all over the United States wanting to know how it is that we are doing what we're doing and wanting help starting their own programs or farming this way. They know that we have the best ideas for the land and for the animals and for the markets. And we're not holding this information tight to ourselves and saying, no, it's ours. We want this to be successful because we want this to be the standard, to be the norm.
Our mission here is not to scale up prosperity in one place. It's to scale it out.
Yes.
And we can do this. Other places can do this. I think maybe the first thing that has to be recognized is, as my husband said years ago at a meeting here, the cavalry ain't coming. We've got to do this ourselves, and we can do it. Other people can do it, and it's such hopeful work. And we've allowed customers to get high quality for a lower price. How have we done this, Beth?
Well, so we decided we weren't going to get rich off of people. We make sure that everyone...
That's so true.
We make sure that everyone along the process gets paid what they deserve to be paid. Our farmers get paid a parity price. Trackside sets their price for processing. And in case of Roseville, we set our price so that we can continue to do this work, and then what chefs want, we'll sell it for an additional amount so that they can continue to distribute to people. But no one is getting rich in this process. With Berry beef, the farmer gets paid their price. Trackside sets their price. And we set our price to what chefs want. They sell it to the restaurants. And everyone makes what they need to make along the process. So with vertical integration in our farm system, the farmers have been left behind. And then everyone, as you go up, continues to make more and more money. And then, you've got the person at the top saying, I want to keep this. And instead of, paying everyone what they need to be paid along the way, the farmers are losing money and the corporations are keeping all of the money.
And it's certainly not just money.
And it's not just money, but it's a shorter supply chain that allows us to know where our food comes from and to know that the food is safe and to be able to track that food.
And to not be pushing off all the cost to the future.
Right.
There's cost in all of this. We just haven't, we're beginning to pay it, I think. I think climate change is beginning to tell us that we've gone about as far as we can go. I think that it's important here to say that we've had a pretty serious lack of imagination in this country about food. First of all, we thought of food as separated from land use, This has allowed industrial organics to take over the organic food industry. I don't think organic carrots or kale or whatever, monocultures of these things in the Central Valley, which is not getting water now, is not what we are after. But I think we're showing that you can, as you just described it, think about the health of all of the people involved in a supply chain if the supply chain is shortened. And if the standard used is not money, but health. Economic health being part of health. So the health of the land and the people. Never separated. I think I'm repeating myself. Beth, to wrap up our discussion today so that we can go into our offices and continue our discussion today, tell us about what do you think is the future of the program? Where do we want to go with this? What are our hopes?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, the future of the program is the co-op. We want a thriving co-op here in Henry County, and we are working our way there. The decisions that we make now are leading us down this path to make decisions for the future and to get where we think we need to be. Along with not just growing individual farmers up, we want to grow the number of farmers out. We want to be able to include as many farmers as we can in Henry County in this program, and eventually maybe move to different counties. But there are a lot of cattle in Henry County, and we've got a lot of beautiful pastures, healthy pastures, and we've got a lot of room for growth here in Henry County first. So we want more farmers. We want more cattle. We would love to include different types of animals, but we've got to perfect the cow first.
The cow is perfected.
Well, we need to...
Back to turning that grass into milk.
Yes, but we need to fully develop our cattle market before we add other animals.
Yes, indeed.
But we want to do what's best for the farmers in Henry County and give them an opportunity to continue to farm and to be able to afford to farm well.
Well, thank you so much, Beth,
Well,
for this conversation and for so much more. It's a pleasure to work with the people at the Berry Center every day, and Beth being one of a wonderful bunch of people. My father and Wes Jackson and others, Fred Kirscherman and others, worked on something called the 50-Year Farm Bill years and years ago. And they didn't expect the 50-Year Farm Bill to be put into law, heaven knows, but they did take it to D.C. and talk to a lot of leaders and so on. And I do believe that they began again, as Wes and Dad and Fred and others have done their whole lives, which is to try to change the conversation, change the standards by which we judge agriculture in this country. One of their hopes, and they put this in the Farm Bill, was to change agriculture in this country from 20% perennial and 80% annual to 80% perennial and 20% annual. So we're disturbing less and less soil. Our home place meat is one way to make sure that more and more of our country becomes perennially farmed. This is important to so much of what's worrying us now. The way we've gone about this program is to think about the way money is used, the way to support community and good land use. if we are to get to the place that we have the sort of social justice that people talk about and hope for and protest for, we're going to have to think about the way our economy is working. We will not have what we want if we continue to have an economy that allows for the destruction of our actual country, our land, and the destruction of our people, our working people. Our Home Place Meet is a small program, and it's working well, and it's hopeful, and it is to be shared with whoever wants to hear about it. If you're within our community, and I'll extend that pretty far, please remember when you go to your restaurants around Cincinnati, Louisville, Lexington, other places, ask for Our Home Place Meat, ask for roast veal, ask for berry beef. It's available at Newcastle at our office. Come in and see us. It's for sale. We ship all over the country if that's something that appeals to you, or look for good beef close to where you are. But we want to thank you for your interest, for your support. I never would have dreamed 12 years ago when the Berry Center started that there would be so many people that would form something called our membership, that would be interested in what we're doing. And it's made what we're doing possible, and it's made us feel that we're not so far out on the margins, that we're in community with all of you. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that if you're in our neighborhood, you'll stop by and see us. Thank you so much.